So imagine this. You're waiting on an insurance payout for over 76,000 pesos for some damaged goods. You've got all the proof. But when the final decision comes through, you only get 500 bucks. Today, we are going to unpack a real-life legal case where that exact thing happened, and you'll see how the entire thing hinged on the fine print of a single document. So that's the big question, right? You have all this documented damage, a totally legitimate insurance claim for over 76,000 pesos. But the final payment is for just 500 US dollars. I mean, how on earth is that legally possible? Well, to figure it out, we're going to have to dig into the case of Unsworth Transport versus the Court of Appeals. You know, when this case first went to court, it seemed pretty straightforward. The judge looked at all the evidence of the damaged and missing stuff and ordered the shipping company to pay the full claim, exactly 76,231 pesos and 27 centavos. At that point, you'd think, okay, case closed. But then it went to the Supreme Court, and everything got turned on its head. The final ruling completely slashed that award, all the way down to just 500 US dollars. That is a huge difference. So what in the world happened between these two rulings? The answer is all in the details of the journey, and you guessed it, the fine print of the law. Okay, to really get what the court was thinking, we have to follow the evidence, just like detectives. Let's trace the journey of this shipment all the way from New York to the Philippines and see exactly where things started to go wrong. So the whole thing starts back in August 1992. It takes about a month for the shipment to even get to Manila. Now look at this timeline. It isn't until October 9th, after it's already sitting in Unsworth's own warehouse, that anyone officially notes any damage. And by the time it gets to the actual customer, Unilab, more surveys confirm not just damage, but that some drums were missing completely. And this is what the whole claim was based on. You had a punctured drum of vitamin extract, a torn bag of yeast with stuff spilled everywhere. Both were rejected, totally unusable. But the biggest problem, the real kicker, was that 5 entire drums were just gone. They never showed up. The loss was real, it was all documented, and it was the basis for that 76,000 peso claim. Okay, so Unilab's insurance paid them out, and then went after the shipping company, Unsworth, to get its money back. And Unsworth's first defense was basically, whoa, hold on, we're just a freight forwarder. We just arrange the shipping. We don't actually do it. We're not fully responsible. And this led to a really critical legal question. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, this legal distinction. Think of a freight forwarder like a travel agent for your cargo. Their responsibility is pretty limited. But a common carrier, they're like the airline itself. They are assumed to be at fault if the goods get lost or damaged, and the burden is on them to prove they were incredibly careful. The level of responsibility is way, way higher. So what was the deciding factor? It all came down to this. Unsworth issued its own bill of lading, and the court saw this piece of paper as the smoking gun. By issuing this document, Unsworth wasn't just arranging transport, they were making a contract to deliver the goods. In the eyes of the law, that bill of lading transformed them from a simple forwarder into a common carrier, making them fully liable. All right, so the court says Unsworth is a common carrier and they're liable, so they should have to pay the full 76 grand, right? Well, not so fast. This is where the story takes its biggest, most unexpected twist, all because of a special law that's all about shipping. And that law is the Carriage of Goods by Sea Act, or COGS-Act for short. You can think of it as a very specific rulebook that applies on top of the regular laws, but only for stuff shipped by sea. It's designed to create a standard set of rules for everybody in international trade, and it's got a really important clause about how much a carrier has to pay when things go wrong. And here it is. This is the sentence that changed everything. COGSA basically says a carrier's liability is capped at $500 per package unless the shipper officially declares a higher value right there on the bill of lading. This is called the package limitation rule. It puts the responsibility on the shipper to say, hey, this stuff is really valuable, and probably pay a little more for that extra risk. And this right here was the 76,000 peso mistake. The original shipper, the company back in New York, never actually wrote down the value of the goods on the bill of lading, and by leaving that space blank, they accidentally triggered that default liability cap of $500. Now, the lawyers for the insurance company tried to argue that, hey, they mentioned a letter of credit and an invoice number, so that implied the value. But the Supreme Court said, nope. They ruled that the declaration has to be super clear, super explicit. Just pointing to other documents isn't good enough to get around that $500 limit. You have to actually state the value. So there we have it. We have solved the mystery of how a P76,000 claim just vanished and became a $500 payout. It all came down to one empty line on a contract. So what's the big lesson here? I mean, why should we care about this case from decades ago? It really boils down to these three crucial steps. First, know who you're working with. Is it just a forwarder or are they a carrier? Second, and this is the big one, you have to always declare the full, true value of whatever you're shipping on that bill of lading. And finally, you have to remember that that document is a real, legally binding contract. Don't just sign it, read it. So, the lesson from this whole messed up journey is crystal clear. That fine print really, really matters. A single blank space on a form can literally be the difference between getting fully paid for your loss or just getting a tiny fraction. It leaves us with a pretty simple but powerful question to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.